For a little bit more analysis on this situation, we're now joined by a correspondent in London, Holly Hudson. Holly, thanks very much indeed for joining us. She tried to be brave, but in the end, it was quite hard and quite tearful.
Yes, I mean, you heard there in that VT, the emotion in her voice. I mean, the writing's been on the wall for the Prime Minister for some time now, but it became a lot clearer this week following the announcement of her new deal. Now, this deal was meant to woo every side of the table into backing her agreement and getting it through Parliament so she could deliver on the mandate that she has always been so resilient and so strong in trying to deliver. But it garnered no support. All it did was prompt a fresh wave of anger from even amongst her own cabinet and calls for her to step down, which today she did outside Number 10. In an emotional speech, she described her deep regret at being unable to deliver Brexit and described this job as the honour of her life before tearing up and turning back into Number 10, where she will only stay now until the 7th of June. Now, for her 3-year premiership was, of course, started by Brexit, and it became her undoing, framed by Brexit entirely. But she did speak in her speech of things that she regarded as her achievements, notably mental health funding, the reduction of unemployment, and, of course, the fact she is only the second female to have held the top job here in Britain. Now, many would argue that she was dealt a terrible hand with Brexit. She had an impossible task, but others, including the opposition party, would say it was right for her to step down. She couldn't command a majority, and she'd become stubborn instead of resilient. Now, she said she strived to do everything that she could in finding that compromise. It'll now be up to the next Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, to try and find that compromise.
All right, we'll chat a little bit about what's going to happen next and who those replacements might be. But let's go back in time a little bit. Yes, she was given this hand, not of her own doing, back in the day when David Cameron lost the referendum that he had asked for. But perhaps the writing started to become on the wall a little bit when she called the election and lost the Conservatives a majority. From then on, I guess, people were now starting to put on the pressure as far back as then.
Yes, well, I mean, you may ask when it went wrong for Theresa May, and you're right there, the general election, many would argue, was the wrong decision for her. The fact that she couldn't command a majority, that there was a hung parliament, meant that this process became even more tricky and more difficult for the Prime Minister without holding a majority in government to get Brexit through, and is what's caused all the problems and the votes to be split amongst her own party as well. Many would argue that this compromise, this new deal, came too little too late, and that when the general election was called and she was aware that she wouldn't hold a majority, that she should have made compromises back then, and this whole process might have become a lot more different.
All right, so who's in the hat at this stage? I'm sure people are meeting in closed doors and smoky rooms, hatching a plan. Boris Johnson's name keeps coming up, as it did the last time. What are his chances this time around?
Well, yes, there's definitely a lot of wheeling and dealing going on behind closed doors, and already has. And it's more a case of who hasn't got their hat in the ring than who has. There's currently 17 people with their hat in the ring. And as you mentioned there, yes, Boris Johnson, a prominent Brexiteer and Leave campaigner, is the front runner. Now, we know that there will be a new Prime Minister by July. The men in grey suits, as they're called, the Conservative Executive Committee, who the Prime Minister met with this morning, have issued a statement thanking her for her strong sense of duty. They confirmed a timetable for the leadership contest. Now, nominations will close on the 10th of June, then it will be whittled down to 2, and then 100,000 Conservative Party members will vote on the new leader, and not just the new leader, the new Prime Minister. Now, the Foreign Secretary has recently confirmed in the last few hours that he will be bidding. The former Brexit Secretary, we know, will. Sir Graham Brady, who is head of that Conservative Executive Committee, has also initiated his interest. But yes, Boris Johnson is currently the front runner, and in the last half an hour, he has thanked the Prime Minister for her duty, for her patience, as he put it, but he also signalled that the UK would potentially crash out with no deal, saying the UK will leave on the 31st of October with or without a deal.
All right, so how likely is a no deal Brexit becoming? It seems as if as time has gone on and this can being kicked further and further down the line, that this is now becoming perhaps more a reality.
Yes, it's even more a possibility now than ever. Boris Johnson as well signalling in that statement that he wants to start preparations for no deal as well. Now, as the new Prime Minister, obviously that is a big signal that that's the direction he is prepared to go. Now, the only problem with that is that the opposition party, Labour, and many other Remain MPs are unlikely to stand by and let that happen. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, already calling for a general election, saying that whoever the new Conservative leader is, they don't hold a democratic majority amongst the people to take Brexit forward, this huge decision that the country made. The newly elected leader of the Conservative Party, the new Prime Minister, will not have been democratically elected by the people. So they're calling for a general election to happen. That could well potentially come to the fore in the next few months. Also, the reaction across Europe to Prime Minister Theresa May's resignation has been a divided one. Many, including Michel Barnier and Jean-Claude Juncker, praising her for her determination, saying they really enjoyed negotiating with her, but also pleading for an orderly Brexit. Many, including the Spanish government and the Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, saying that they are concerned about the danger that this now leads in terms of a no-deal Brexit.
All right, and perhaps finally, on the other side of the equation, are the bookmakers shortening the odds on a second referendum?
Well, the second referendum, of course, was the main sticking point and essentially what led to Theresa May's downfall. So it's potentially still a very likely prospect if there was to be a general election and the Labour government were to get in. Obviously, that is something that many Remain MPs within the Labour Party have been calling for. So, yeah, I'm sure that the bookmakers are really shortening the odds on that.
All right, Holly Hudson, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed. That's our correspondent in the UK, Holly Hudson, giving us a view of what's likely to play out in the coming days. But what we know for sure is that Theresa May will not be Prime Minister of the UK, and she's stepping down as a party leader. So the race is on. Who's going to take over the party, and how will they handle this tricky issue of exiting Europe? Now,